In the last episode, we got the intercooler brackets all the way fabbed up and the intercooler mounted. Also got the radiator mount modified, that way we could fit the bigger radiator. Got the supercharger mocked up. All of our tubing for this side is all the way finished up. Our filter is on. We also cut off the exhaust, removed all the fuel lines, removed the fuel tank. We got our new headers installed, and then our drive shaft is ordered. Hopefully it'll get here in this video. But one of the first things we're gonna start up doing is modifying our wheel wells. So I ordered these wheel wells off of Amazon, and I just figured it would be cheaper to order these than try and build them myself, just because I don't have all of the machinery right now. So these are what we're gonna use. They're actually made for trailers, but we're gonna modify them and make them work with the car. And hopefully it turns out really nice. So I wanted to get all of my piping over here done first, because this is where there's really not a lot of room. I'm not too worried about this side just because we have tons of room over here. So we are going to get the new wheels off, and then we're gonna get our new wheel wells mounted up in there, and we're gonna start seeing what we have to trim and what we have to do to make them fit. So let's get started on that. Okay, so I got both of the wheel wells kind of clamped up into place, you can see. So I'm just using 2 pliers right there, and I think that's about where I want it. We're just doing this so that we don't get rocks and everything to hit the top of the fender and water to go everywhere. So this will hopefully be able to keep it enclosed just a little bit more. But you can see on this side, there is enough clearance right here. I can fit my fingers all the way in between. So all of that looks really good. I think what the plan will be is I'm actually gonna go and trim this off, and then we're gonna have to cut out pieces of sheet metal and put them in as filler panels here. And then I may do it here as well, just to block that off. That way it just looks a little bit cleaner instead of having these holes. So it'll be a plate there, and then you can see underneath, it's not long enough there. So we're probably gonna have to build a piece of sheet metal right here and just weld it onto the bottom of that. That way it extends all the way down. But as far as the front, I'm happy with how this looks. I don't think this looks too bad right here. I'm just not a big fan of how the rear looks. I may build a piece here as well, but I just haven't decided yet. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna start trimming these pieces off, because now I know where my clearances are. Then we're gonna start fitting these up again, and then hopefully we're gonna start welding. So let's get that edge trimmed up, and then we're gonna see how that looks. Okay, so got that rail shaved off right there. I wanted to leave it in the back just because I know that the hinge needs at least a little bit of support. Now, I'm gonna actually weld this down, so the support will still be there. But you can see that's about how it's gonna look. And it pretty much covers the entire tread. I really like that. So I threw the Forgiatos on, and you can see the suspension is all the way drooped right now. So you have to account for that. So you have to realize it'll be a little bit lower than this, probably at least a couple inches. So you can see we are pretty close. We're pretty much touching right there. So I'm gonna trim this all the way up like this. That way when the suspension is dropped, this will just be kind of a guess right now. We're just gonna cut it, so when we drop it, we are able to turn it all the way, and then if I have to trim more, we can trim more. And then you can see around front, it's not as bad, but I'm still just gonna trim this just in case right here, just to make sure we have enough room for when the suspension is compressed. But other than that, we're pretty close to here. But I think we're gonna be okay. So I also have to go in and I have to trim this edge off right here, and then we're gonna have to build a piece that will fill this in, and then also fill in the inside of the wheel well. So I'm gonna pull the Forgiato back off and make these cuts, and then throw it back on one more time just to make sure I like the way everything looks. Okay, so the inner wheel well is pretty much fit up in there. You can see I had to cut this here. We trimmed this out away just a little bit, And then we also trimmed this out of the way. So I'm actually glad that we had to cut this just because now I'm gonna be able to make a seamless piece and not have to put this crazy bend in it. So it'll just be an easy triangle piece that I'll just put here that'll connect to the bottom of the fender. And then same thing on this side, I'll just have it come right here. That way you can cap all of this off. That way you won't be able to see any of that. Another thing that I'm gonna have to do is actually slit this piece right here and push it in more. That way I can close up this gap between the fender and this inner wheel well. But honestly, that wasn't too bad, and I'm actually really happy with the way that it looks. So now that I got this side mocked up, I'm actually gonna do this same exact thing to this other side, and then after that, we're gonna start to do all of our patchwork and get them welded in. Okay, so after tons of grinding and fitting, it is pretty much where I want it to be. So now that both sides are pretty much fit, the next step is getting all of the mounting locations where I want them. So I'm gonna be using the stock mounting locations. That way I can unbolt this if I have to. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a cardboard and I'm gonna build a template of this space right here. And then I'm going to weld it to my inner wheel well, and then it will bolt on the backside of this. So I got lots of fab work to do, but I'm gonna work on getting that all bolted up down there. That way this will stay in the same spot. And then I'll start to build my extensions down there and then figure out how I'm going to mount it up here. Okay, so these are the modifications that I've had to make to it so far. So there's 4 mounting bolts underneath the fender. And I was originally thinking I was gonna weld this in so that it would all be one piece, but I decided it's just gonna be better if I do it bolt in. That way, if we ever wanna take it apart and paint it, which we are, we can actually unbolt the inner fender. So it'll be just like factory. And I'm actually trying to use the factory mounting holes. So there are 2 holes here, because these 2 holes touch at the bottom of the fender. This has a more aggressive arch in it than the factory fenders. So the other 2 bolt holes land about right here, about 3 inches down. So what my plan is I got these holes drilled so that I can at least bolt these 2 mounts up. That way I know that's exactly where I want it and they line up. And then I'm gonna build this piece. I'll cut it out of cardboard first and match it up to the car. And then I'll cut it out of metal and then we'll weld it to this edge right here. And then we'll drill the holes there. That way this will bolt up in all the 4 factory mounting locations. I also had to slit this just because the shape of the fender comes back a little bit more this way right here. So I'm actually gonna have to add in a small piece right here. Luckily this is right against the fender, so it's pretty much hidden, and when we rhino line this, you're never gonna see that transition. So that is pretty much the plan for this. I'm gonna go get U-nuts, and then I'm also gonna get hardware so that I can start to bolt these up. And then after I get this part bolted up, I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna bolt the back side to the inside of the fender. And then once that's done, we'll be able to build our extensions that are gonna come off both these edges. That way it'll go all the way down. So I'm actually gonna jump onto the other side, do this exact same thing, get it ready to get bolted up. And then tomorrow I'll go get the U-nuts and bolts, and we'll be able to bolt up both sides and start fabricating all of this. Okay, so both of the wheel wells are bolted up. I just did the lower bolt for now, so just right here, and then one right there. And so that is holding it. What I'm gonna work on now is I'm going to get this piece from here to here made. And then I'm gonna drill those holes out, get those bolted up, and then we're gonna deal with this last. So what we're gonna do now is we are actually going to make this piece that goes from here to here. I'm probably actually gonna bring it a little bit lower just so it matches the curvature of the wheelhouse opening. So I'm gonna get a piece of cardboard and make a template quick, and then we're gonna cut that out of metal. We'll tag it in place, make sure everything looks good, and then we are going to keep fabricating the rest of the bottom of the wheel well. So let's get started with making those templates. So the first side is bolted up. You can see all the bolts are in. I just tacked this piece up to my wheel well just to see, and then I also tacked where I had to do my relief cut. So now that's tacked into place, I'm gonna work on doing these pieces right here. So I'm gonna do one, I'm probably just gonna follow this line right here and just bring it behind the fender right there. And then I'm gonna do the exact same thing on this side, just bring it down just so I can close that off. I think it'll look better instead of just having a line right there. So I'm gonna work on building those pieces right now. The wheel well is pretty much all tacked into place. So I have all the 4 bolts that go across the top in, you can see on this side. And then I got this piece made. I want to keep it pretty tight to this because I want to make sure my tire clears. And I did the same thing on this side. So I think it looks pretty good. I'm really happy with that.
So I decided to do some testing here to see if it would look better with this panel. I'm still not sure how I feel about it, but I think I'll come back later to see if I can make something work.
Okay, so got that piece cut out of metal. I think I'm just gonna leave it at that right now. I'm gonna go get some riv nuts and put those in. That way I'll be able to bolt this up to the fender. And then I'm also gonna do some trimming on it just to make it look a little bit better. But that will pretty much be it for this side. So I'm gonna jump back on this side right now and we are gonna do the same thing. We're gonna start and build that inner piece right there. Get our wheel all finished up, build the extensions, and then cut out this same piece to fit. But on this side, I have to mock up all of my tubing to make sure it fits and I don't have to make any modifications to the inner wheel well. Okay, so check those out. Those are my wheel wells. So that is pretty much it for mock-up. I'm gonna final weld all of these seams and then do the same thing on this one. And then I'll grind down the welds and then we're gonna throw them back in. Now I still have to figure out how I'm gonna mount the outside to the top of the fender, but that'll be another day, so I'm gonna final weld these. Okay, so the front wheel wells are all the way finished up. I ground down all of my welds, so they are actually ready to go back in. But what I want to do first is I want to try and clean up all of this area because there is metal shavings absolutely everywhere. So I'm going to sweep everything out, clean up, I'll put all the tools away, and then we'll throw the front wheel wells on and test all of our clearances. And honestly, we're probably going to set the car on the ground to make sure the wheel's clear. So let's get started on that. Okay, so the wheel wells are installed. I threw on this wheel just because it was already unwrapped, and then you could see I unwrapped all of the other wheels. So I'm gonna get them all on. We're gonna drop the car down and make sure all of our clearances are good. But look how good these wheels look. These are the rear ones, so they're a little bit more of a deeper dish, but man, they are stunning. So I'm gonna get the rest of the wheels thrown on the car, and then we're gonna drop the car and push the car out. That way I can clean up the rest of the shop.
it is a new day back at the shop, and we are back to work on the 71 Cutlass. So the wheel wells are all bolted up. Everything fits really, really nicely. There is clearance when we turn the wheels. They're actually looking really good. I don't know if I'm super happy about how it's at this little bit of an angle, you could see, and then it's the same thing on this side. Not sure how much that's going to matter because we're going to block off the front of this, but I'm going to talk to my friend and see if he wants me to move these and make them straight or just leave them like that. So the next thing on my list is we are deleting all of this. This is an original AC car. We're deleting all of that. Eventually we are going to go vintage air, but right now I'm just going to build a plate to cover that up. So hopefully I don't have to pull the motor out to get that off, but I'm going to work on removing that right now. So I'm probably going to have to take off this wheel because I know I have to pull my new wheel well out. And then there's going to be some bolts behind the fender, and then hopefully I can squeeze this out. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it. I may have to just loosen the motor, which is going to suck because then I have to pull all of this off, pull the motor back out, take that off, and then set the motor back in. So that is what I'm going to get started. We're going to try and get that thing torn out.
Okay, so check that out. It is, there's a pain in the butt. You can see there was one nut all the way down there that was just a pain to get to. But other than that, it is off. It looks good. So now I have to go on the inside of the car under the dash, and we have to get all of this removed. And that is going to be absolutely fun because I'm not sure how I'm going to get it out. But I'm going to have to climb underneath and see if there's enough room to pull it out without pulling the dash. And then while we're at it, we may as well start getting into the wiring. So get the old gauge cluster completely torn out and then tear out the wiring with the fuse box and all that stuff and try and get all the interior wiring removed. So we're gonna start on that, try and get this thing out. Okay, so this is gonna be an absolute disaster. So what I have to do first is I actually have to get the center console removed just so I can get this lower trim piece out. And in order to do that, I have to pull my seat. So there are 4 nuts under the car that I'm going to loosen. That way I can get the seat up, and then we'll be able to pull out the center console. And then hopefully by just removing this piece, we'll be able to kind of see what we need to take off, and we'll be able to squeeze that climate control unit out of here. Okay, that's one. And that's 2. Okay, so interior's out. Let's get started on tearing apart the dash.
Okay, so we are under the dash, and you can see got a lot of wiring to remove over on this side. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull the gauge cluster right now, which is right up over there, that green part that you're seeing. I'm going to get that pulled, that way I can get the rest of the wiring removed and hopefully get to the fuse box.
Okay, so pretty much all the wiring is torn out from under the dash. So I'm gonna clean up all of this right now and throw it in a pile. I'm not gonna throw it away until I am completely finished with the wiring harness. And that honestly wasn't too bad. I still have to pull the carb right here and pull the wiring harness that it goes to the rear of the car, but that's pretty easy. Other than that, the wiring harness removal is pretty much all finished up. So I'm gonna get that cleaned up, probably gonna pull the carpet and finish tearing out the rear of the wiring. Okay, we're getting ready to tear apart the trunk, and that's pretty big. But I just wanted to show you guys this awesome wiring job that they did. Super cool. So that's not how you do that. So I'm gonna finish pulling this out, pull these off, and tear apart the trunk. That way I can get all of the wiring behind all of these panels and then tear all of that out pretty much. I got the trunk pretty much all cleaned out. I'm gonna have to vacuum everything. I don't know how all of that got in there. I know this car was outside for a couple of years, so that's probably what happened, but he had a pretty big sub in there, so I got that out. And then I also got all of the rear wiring completely torn out. So all the wiring is out of the car now. The next thing I want to do before this video ends is I want to build the block off plate for this right here. So what the plan will be is I'm going to grab a piece of cardboard. We are going to outline it in that shape, throw the template on a piece of metal, cut it out, and then drill all of the holes. That way it will pretty much just be a block off paint. And then when we go to paint everything, that will get painted. So it will pretty much blend in. So let's get started on that to finish this up. Okay, so I started to get that piece mocked up and I just put one bolt in for now. When we pull the motor back out, I'm going to drill those holes and we're gonna be able to put bolts through the rest of them. But I think that will pretty much be it for this episode on the 71 Cutlass. Wheel wells are pretty much all mocked up. Now you can see the Firewall delete is kind of there. We got the entire interior removed from the Cutlass as well, and then also the trunk pulled apart. All of the old wiring is completely gone. And that's going to be exactly what we do in the next episode on this 71 Cutlass is the wiring. I have a brand new American Auto Wire wiring harness right here that we are going to slap in this baby. And then hopefully our drive shaft and our EFI unit will be here. That way we can continue to build all of our tubing up here, try and finish up the fabrication on the engine bay, and get this thing completely wired. So thanks so much for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episodes on this 71 Cutlass. Still got a lot of work to do, but we've come a long way. I'm hoping in the next month or so, we have this car on the road running. Hope you guys have an awesome week, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.